Ever pinch pennies all year for that one family vacation only to feel the budget blues afterwards? If so, I was just like you. After 3 vacationless years, I stumbled on credit card rewards travel and cracked the code to amazing vacations that I could actually afford.
Welcome to Wonderland on Points. In this podcast, you will discover how opening credit cards strategically can save you thousands on travel. We're not just dreamers anymore. We're 2 adventurous moms turning dreams into reality. Join us as we spill all the points and miles secrets.
And contrary to popular belief, you don't have to spend $1 million to earn 1,000,000 points. Traveling on credit card points isn't reserved for those with overflowing bank accounts. It's for everyday people like you and me, learning to turn routine expenses into free travel.
Consider us your points travel guides. This is Wonderland on Points. Let the adventure begin. It's a great day for the podcast. Today we have one of my favorite people. It is Katie from Katie's Travel Tricks. She taught me so much about traveling with points and miles. I absolutely cannot wait for you guys to get to know her and learn some things from her. But first, we cannot go without mentioning the huge news. Finally, it is the magical time of year that Chase has increased the sign-up bonus for the Chase Sapphire Preferred and the Chase Sapphire Reserve cards. Are you so excited, Joanna?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. And you know, the first thing I did, like the moment that I saw my referral link go up, I sent it to Dane and he got his card. I was actually a little salty that they gave him a higher credit limit than me. Not that we really need it, but it just, it feels like a competition at this point, but it's fine. And we will keep everybody posted because I think some people have been messaging, asking about the in-branch offer is 85,000 points. Like, I want to get that. I want to remind people of a few things. First of all, if you're playing in 2-player mode in a household and your partner is referring you, you're collectively getting 85,000 points anyways. And then the second thing is we have attempted to reach out to the branch after using a personal referral and see if they will honor that in-branch offer. I don't know if they will. We will keep you posted, but it has been known to work in the past. I also, third thing, want to remind people that the 85,000 points require $2,000 extra dollars of spend. So you're getting 75,000 points for $4,000 of spend. And then you're getting 10,000 points for $2,000 of spend. And someone pointed out in a group that I'm in that is actually really not a great value and that you could open an entirely new card and put $2,000, $4,000, $6,000 of spend towards a different welcome bonus of 75,000 maybe for an ink. And your money is going to a larger pool of points. So keep that in mind and also make sure you have the extra money to spend if you were to try to pursue that bonus. I think the 2-player mode at home and then attempting to message and have them match the offer is probably the smarter way to go.
Honestly, I don't know that 10,000 points is enough to get me to walk into a branch and have to talk to someone face to face. I think there's some value in just being able to do it from home without having to go in. But I also referred my player to, because if you remember, Chase Sapphire Preferred was one of the very first cards that we ever had. So he had the card for about 6 years and never churned it. So after I got a Chase Sapphire Preferred, we kind of made that plan that before the springtime, because we anticipated the past several years, this is always the same time of year that Chase tends to elevate that offer. So about a month and a half ago, we had him downgrade his Chase Sapphire Preferred to a Chase Freedom Flex. And that opened up a spot because it had been more than 48 months for him to then sign up for the Chase Sapphire Preferred again and re-earn the sign-up bonus. So that's something to keep in mind. Some credit cards, you can churn like that after 24 months. With Chase Sapphire Preferred and Reserve, you're only eligible for that bonus after 48 months. So we did that for him, and I was really excited about it. We've loved the card. It's a card we always plan to have. But every 4 years, you can re-earn the sign-up bonus. So that's fun.
Absolutely. And guys, we have our personal links for this card in the show notes. And just a reminder, we are not affiliates. We don't make money off of this, but we do get a small amount of points. So if you don't already have a link that you're using, it means so much to us when you use our links. We put a lot of work into this podcast, and this we get nothing out of it right now except the joy of helping people, which is what we're here for. But when you guys leave ratings and reviews and when you use our links, it is really, really helpful and it means a lot to us. So please, please consider doing that if you do not already have a link you're using.
All right, it's time to learn from one of the masters in this field. Let's talk to Katie. Today is a special day on the podcast for me, and that's because I feel like I am interviewing a celebrity. I'm going to be very honest. I am a little starstruck. When I first started thinking about points and miles and really learning, our guest today is Katie from Katie's Travel Tricks. And you were one of the very first people that I found online. And I felt like you were so relatable and you felt like a person just like me. And that's what drew me to you, because I really felt like I could learn from you because I have a family, I have young kids. I want to travel, but I have busy school life and chaos. And you were somebody who I felt like, oh, she's kind of like me. She's traveling with kids. You're not just luxury and business class flights. You're stuff for everyday people like me. And so I just kind of fell in love with you on the internet, and now I feel like I am interviewing a celebrity. So welcome. Please share with our guest kind of who you are and what your family makeup is, because I think that so many of our listeners are going to relate to you as well.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. That's very kind of you to say. I promise you, I'm just a very normal person who accidentally went viral a couple times on Instagram. And so I ended up with a bigger platform than I ever expected. So, obviously, my name's Katie. We live in the Chicago suburbs, my husband and I, and we have 2 kids.
Oh.
They are both 11. So they're not twins. My son was adopted from the Philippines. And
That's awesome.
we basically came to we started using points really, really when we got married. So that was 13 years ago, because we were on a budget. Like when we got married, my husband was in grad school. I worked as a nonprofit director, but we both loved traveling. My husband actually grew up overseas. And so it was like never a question of, will we travel? It was more, how can we make it work? What are the things we need to do to make it work? And so that really brought us to points. I think how it can just be like you hear something, and then for most people, it's like you hear one thing and then you hear another thing, and then you go down a rabbit trail, and next thing you have
snowball.
Like 20 credit cards, and you're like, oh, this happened. So we really started, quite a long time ago, and then, and just kept amping up. And I think the thing that really amped us up was when we were getting ready to adopt our son from the Philippines. We really wanted to pay for all of that with points. And I'd done enough by that point to know that it was possible. But that was a pretty big goal for all of us to go to the Philippines. And we wanted my mom to come as well. And so we had to really ratchet up what we were doing, because our adoption process, thankfully, was very short. Relatively speaking, it was about 15 months.
That's great.
And
that's
so
rare.
we were like, oh my gosh, we need to get these points. And so we were super focused. And then we just kind of stayed in that high level mode. I mean, high level in quotes, because it's not. But just, we had made it more of a habit rather than just something we did occasionally. And so that kind of spiraled into we kept doing it. And then our friends and family were continually confused by how much we were traveling because we don't, by that point, I was a stay-at-home mom and my husband is a nurse, and we had a comfortable salary, but it's not like we could go anywhere we wanted doing that. Right. And so they're like, I don't understand. You're going to you're going to Mexico to an all-inclusive again, and you're going to Jamaica, and you're doing what? What's going on?
How?
Yes. The math ain't mathin'.
Yes. And we were we're actually known in our neighborhood for being extremely frugal. My husband dumpster dives for a lot of our food, which I occasionally share on my Instagram, but he has his own page for
I
that.
love it.
So people were really like, this doesn't make any sense. I'd say that's the part of me that's like the least relatable. Is that
I think it's hilarious. I've seen you share that. I've seen you share that and like find really amazing things that then you like garage sale, right? Or you Facebook
Sometimes
Marketplace
he does.
sell?
Honestly, a lot of it is food. He finds food. So
Okay,
a
see,
lot of it is
that
just
I'm fascinated
what we're
by.
eating.
I grew up in a home with a dumpster diver for a father for like pieces of furniture and like really cool stuff.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I love that. I'm always picking up like stuff on the side of the road that's got a free sign on it. It's a problem.
Yeah.
I have not heard people actually doing with this with food. I'm fascinated. I feel like I could go on a really bad tangent. So you'll have to tell us where to follow your husband so that I can go find out all of this.
Instagram, I would say, is the best way to. It's on Dumpster Diving Dad is his
yes
handle.
Amazing.
So yes,
follow.
I will be following. I'm also
dumpster diving. Then he's the one to follow.
Guys, I'll put it in the show notes, you guys. So click on the link in the show notes to go. I'm very curious. So how did you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to teach other people how to do this now? I imagine it was something like our circumstance where people in your immediate life or maybe are a little tired of it, or you're just helping people constantly because they're always asking you questions. And at some point, you're like, okay, I should probably do something with this.
Yeah. And I think that it's like a very similar story for a lot of people, because for me, it was, I usually say, I was writing these really long emails to people trying to explain it. And then I started feeling like, this is not an efficient use of my time. I'll just put it on a website. Mm-hmm. And initially I thought I'd just do a very, very niche website just for adoptive parents, because that's a group of people that I think like can really benefit from, because people are always trying to figure out how to afford adoption. Right, there's so many ways to do it. But if you can cut out your travel expense, because some people are spending $5,000 or more on travel. So I'm like, if you can just not spend that. So that was my initial idea. And then I expanded fairly quickly after that, but still wanted to focus on families, because that is a niche, as you know, that is really underserved with miles and points information, because it's not as luxurious to stay at a Hyatt place. Like it just isn't, but that's realistic for a lot of people, and that's what people actually want to do. And so have continued to want to really focus on, to focus in and stay focused on families. And now I would say like normal people travel as well.
Yeah. Yes, which we love that. You're in the right place here. Our slogan on this show is free breakfast is our love language. We're always telling people to stay at a Hyatt place or a Hyatt house and to pack their lunches for their families from that breakfast buffet. So
we do it.
I think Mary Ellen's the one who showed me your account, and I was like, oh my gosh, so practical, so relatable. It's exactly what we are super passionate about, because it is hard. We're all, we're burnt out. When you have to fly multiple kids places, it can be almost impossible. And then you're kind of stuck on that road trip lifestyle because it's the only thing you can afford. I'm from St. Louis, so my best vacation before I started Points and Miles was like a road trip to Chicago. That was all I could do. We're not going anywhere else because we have no money.
What's funny is like in reverse, like we love to go to St. Louis. That's one of our favorite places to go on vacation.
I saw the City Museum on your Instagram, and I was like, oh, she's been here. That's what I tell people. I say, give yourself an entire day and make sure you don't leave without seeing the City Museum.
Yeah. Like we tell everyone, I mean, we've been to museums literally like all over the world, and it's our favorite museum in the world, and it's right in St. Louis. So.
Yes. Love that.
Fun fact, Joanna, was that not your first job in high school? Am I remembering you at one point worked at City Museum?
This is correct. So my first job outside of the house and like babysitting. So I was 14 years old. The woman across the street is the founder of the Everyday Circus, and her kids were also homeschooled. So there's a circus on the third floor of the City Museum. And so we were friends with their family. I was friends with her kids. And she said, we need someone to run the snow cone machine. That was just such a transformative job for me because it just taught me a lot. And I got to be at the City Museum every day, and I got to go to the City Museum for free and my off time. It was a glorious childhood. Being homeschooled has its perks.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. We homeschool our kids as well, so they have
Oh, you do?
they
I
don't
love
they
that.
don't get to work at the city museum. They would love that, but we don't live close enough.
Katie, I've seen you mention something that I've not seen anywhere else. You are the only person I've ever seen talk about this, and that is advocating for people to freeze their credit reports between credit card signups. Why is it that people should consider doing this? Because I didn't even know that's a thing that you could do. And yeah, help me understand why you would go to the trouble to do that.
The main reason is it's just to protect your identity a little bit more. Identity theft is pretty common. I actually think I could be getting my facts wrong, but I know you had Ryan on from Profits and Points. He posted a couple years ago that he had his identity stolen. And so
Oh.
but I could be wrong, but that's what my Instagram memory says. But it's just something just in general, right? Like it can happen. There's data breaches all the time that are happening. I'm always getting alerts saying like your credit or
Me too.
your data has been compromised.
Your information's on the dark web is what
Mhm.
Chase told me recently. So didn't like that.
Yeah. It's not a perfect system to freeze your credit. It used to cost money to freeze your credit
Okay.
bureau reports. But it doesn't anymore. There was a law, and I don't know when the law was, but it was fairly recently in my adult life that it changed. And so after that point, now you can freeze and unfreeze for free. And basically what that means is anytime someone tries to access your credit, it's blocked. So what it prevents is somebody going in to a bank or something and pretending to be you, or doing an online application and pretending to be you. Because typically I think what happens when someone might steal your identity is they're opening a credit card account in your name, racking up a ton of bills, and then dropping the credit card, right? But it's still attached to you. You don't know about it until it goes to collections. At that point, you can do a process. There is a process to go through for fraud and all of that, but it takes a really long time. It's not like an easy process. So it's easier if you just change so your default is that you're just frozen on all the major credit bureaus, then you don't have to worry as much. Could someone still steal your identity in other ways? Sure. I'm sure they can. But it protects, like it's like the low level.
Right. How do you do it? How do you call each bureau, or what are the practical
so it's
steps
on
for
each
this?
of their website. So Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, if you Google on any of them, TransUnion freeze, it'll take you straight to their website. You create an account, and it's just like a one button thing that you do. And then anytime if you want to apply for a credit card, you can it's called like schedule a thaw. And you go in there and you can schedule a 1-day thaw. So for 1 day, it'll go off, and then you can apply for a credit card. In my case, I never remember. So it's fine. What usually happens with me depends on the bank, but like I applied for a Citi card a credit card from Citi recently, and I apply, and then it sends me a message instead of you're applied, or approved or denied. It says your credit is frozen. We couldn't access it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. And then it usually on Citi anyway, it gives you 15 minutes to go and thaw it. So then I just like go over and I open another browser window and I thaw my credit report, and it tells you which one to thaw. With Citi it does. Yeah, it's instant.
Because that was my question. Okay, I was going to say, like, how long does it take for the freeze to go into place? How long does it take for a thaw? So it's you can do it right away.
It's totally instant. It's like I go back to the browser, it refreshes, and then it processes the application. There are some banks that will just auto deny you. So like Capital One will just auto deny you, and they won't even really explain that that's why it was. Like sometimes they will, but
you mean if you're still frozen?
So if you're
frozen, to thaw it.
Yeah, and you forgot, Capital One will just deny you. And then if you could call reconsideration and tell them that. And that can work. Like my dad did that recently, and he had to call Capital One and say like, okay, now I've frozen, I've thawed my accounts. But it is easier if you do it right before. That would be the best.
Okay.
If you can have that habit.
I don't know if this is a stupid question, but it's what popped into my head. If your credit is frozen, are you still building your credit score? Like,
yes.
Or does so your credit score is not frozen.
Right. So the only thing
the
that's
ability
frozen
to access.
Is that creditors cannot access your credit report is all that it means. It's kind of like covering up your credit report with internet privacy. So nobody can
Okay.
access it unless you give them permission by thawing it. So all those things
Love
that are
it.
going on, the credit bureaus themselves are still going to be calculating your score. They're still going to be doing all those calculations behind the scenes. It's just that no one can go to a bank, like no one can go to US Bank and apply for a credit card in your name and have it be
Right. So
approved
there's
because
really no downside at all.
yeah, I think the only downside is like the tiny bit of hassle every time you apply for a card. But that's to
Right.
me worth it because of how much hassle it is if your identity gets stolen. It's way more hassle
Absolutely.
that later on. So if you can do it up front, that's going to save you a lot of time if it happens. Because
Oh,
I just think it's going to,
100%.
I don't think identity theft is going away. If anything, it's
No.
probably just going to keep getting worse.
Yep, for sure.
Oh, it absolutely is. And it gets easier, I think, for people all the time. And then there's the AI stuff. I mean, there's just, I always kind of tease my mom for how weird she is about like not wanting to say like credit card numbers or social security numbers over the phone or whatever. And I always think it's a little funny, but she has a friend who works in banking and has said, like, you would not believe what people can do. She said, never access your online bank account on your phone. I mean, all kinds of kind of
Yeah.
scary stuff. So if you've got your credit frozen, and it's so easy to do, it really seems like you should probably do it. And it is funny, nobody talks about that. I mean, we follow a lot of people in Points and Miles, and I've never seen that from anyone else either. So
yeah, I'm kind of surprised because it seems like a pretty basic step that everybody could be doing.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you do it? It's free to do. It just takes a few minutes to set it up.
absolutely.
Katie, one of your favorite airline programs that we have really not talked about at all on our podcast yet is Avianca, especially for flights to Europe. So tell us why. We have so many family listeners. Tell us why it's a great option for families, and then which point currencies transfer to them. And this, I'm asking too many questions at once, but is their website user-friendly? Because so many times I have thought about transferring to various airlines and I go to their website and I'm like, whoa, okay, this is not user-friendly, at least not for someone in the US. I don't know if this is worth the hassle. So have you had that trouble with them?
So I will say it is not one of my favorite programs. I just did a big profile on the sweet spots. So
Okay.
I don't consider it a beginner-friendly redemption at all. But I think that there are some people that it makes sense for. There's basically Avianca is in the Star Alliance. So with Avianca Life Miles, you can book flights on other Star Alliance airlines. United is one of those, but like Swiss Air is one of those as well. Lufthansa is one of those as well. So there are certain routes, typically on Avianca, it would be 60,000 miles round trip in economy to book a ticket to Europe. But for some reason that nobody really knows, there are certain routes that price cheaper, especially on the way there. They don't usually price cheaper on the way back. And so it's just like a weird little quirk of the program. And no one had done a research dive into exactly which routes that was true on. And there's a few routes that it's true on business class. And I think that's why no one continued on, because it's just a little bit relevant to business class, but there was a lot more routes in economy. And so I had my team do some research they searched every single Star Alliance route from the US to Europe to find which ones had the price, the special pricing. And so it really makes sense if you're on one of the nonstop routes. Like if you want to go on one of the nonstop routes, and I don't have them all memorized off the top of my head, but the very cheapest one is JFK to Geneva, Switzerland on Swiss Air. That's like a very niche route, right? But like if you live in New York and you are going to Geneva, Switzerland, it's only 16,500 miles for that one-way flight on the way there. So that's almost half price of what you would normally expect it to price at. So it can make sense for those really specific routes, but the website is not user-friendly. Their cancellation fees are really high. I will say, I think since we're talking about like families going to Europe, I really think the thing that people don't talk about it nearly enough is that cash prices to Europe are so cheap most of the time.
Yes. True.
There are so many flight sales to Europe. I personally think flying to Europe with points isn't the best. Like, I don't want to. Anytime I want to say something more extreme, I'm like, oh gosh, someone's gonna
Do
not
it.
like what I'm
No,
doing.
no. There's always going to be haters. We want honesty here. Bring it.
It's just really easy to get cheap flights to Europe if you wait for a flight sale. It is really, really common for flights to Europe to be in the 400s. That is like, it's not like, that is not like a, is it ever going to happen thing? It is like, this happens every few months. And so, I think there are times that it makes sense to transfer points, to use them to fly to Europe. But it doesn't always make sense. I can tell you that like my sister has a ton of points, mostly thanks to me, but she has a business. She just recently, so she's always opening cards. She has points, and we were looking at options for her family. They went to Portugal last year for like 3 weeks or something. And I guess they needed 4 tickets because they had a baby. So the baby was still free. So we looked at all the different places she could transfer points to. But when you transfer points when you're going to Europe, you still have to pay taxes and fees. And those are usually fairly high, right? So a lot of people talk a lot about flying blue. And I think that it can be a really good program for going. If you have an option to go nonstop to Paris from your home airport, it can make sense. But the taxes and fees round trip are they're usually around $200. So I'm like, so yeah, you used only 30,000 points, but you also used $200. And like, could you have bought a flight for $450? I'm like, it's not like you don't always have to learn how to do that, I guess is what I'm saying. Right. So for my sister, we looked at all these options. We're like, you could transfer. We were like, you could transfer to Avianca Life Miles. You could transfer to Flying Blue. You could do all this. But what was the best for her was just British Airways had a flight sale going on. And so she used her Ultimate Rewards points. She has a Chase Sapphire Reserve. She used her Ultimate Rewards points. She redeemed them. So, I don't know, if the ticket was $600, she redeemed 40,000 points per person. And that included all of the taxes and fees. It was all included in there.
Sure.
And she
taxes
had one
and
stop.
Fees will get you.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm searching points, and I'll get really excited because it's like a 10,000 point flight, and then it's like $328.03 in taxes and fees. So I will put a cap on the taxes and fees in my search for like $100. And then you're seeing points that are like 40,000, 50,000 points. So it is very interesting to think about that cash rate. And it's also, we just had somebody on talking about like American Airlines status, for example. If you're going for status on an airline, you can use their card to do your cash flights, get a ton of points for booking a cash flight that you can use on a better flight later, and also help yourself earn status somewhere potentially. So using cash sometimes is a great option if you can find good
saying even just using
deals.
Cash, even using your points as cash back or through the portal.
Using the purchase eraser for a cash fare sometimes makes sense.
Or booking in the portal. Yeah. I know you might have heard people say don't book in the portal, but I'm also like, book in the portal. We do it.
We do, obviously that's like the first thing that you learn once you start to get into points and miles. But like I keep telling people, like I just bought Universal Studios tickets in the portal with my points. And I feel very good about myself because there's no chance I was spending $900 for me and my daughter to go to Universal Studios for 4 days. I don't have it. It's not laying around in my budget. But you know what? I did have a bunch of points. I used them to buy those.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. I say I don't ever calculate cents per point.
We try to encourage people to just think about what value is it for you. You know, if it is bringing value to your family, who cares about the cents per point? Use the points however it's going to be best for your family. For Joe, that's booking Universal tickets through a portal that other people wouldn't do. And so I think don't get so hung up and stressed out on getting the absolute best redemption. Go places that your family wants to go, and however is best for you to get there, don't sweat it. Embrace that the points are supposed to add value to you and not cause you to stress out that you're getting the best points redemption.
Well, and particularly with flights, people exaggerate their value all the time. So one of the classic ways to exaggerate value is to compare your redemption to a one-way flight. one-way flights to Europe cost as much or more than a round trip to Europe usually. So, but everybody loves to compare their one-way. They're like, I only paid 15,000 points and $200 for this one-way on Air France. It would have cost $1,000. And I'm like, no, it actually would. It wouldn't have, because you would have bought a round trip and it would have cost $700 or $600. You know what I mean? So I think it's really easy to distort those numbers. And if you're really committed to cents per point, then you start distorting the numbers in order to make yourself feel good. And then you're like losing sight of the whole point of this.
Right.
Like you said, it should be about what's bringing value to your life, not what distorted, what value can you prove?
So do you ever book award tickets round trip? Because I always look for one ways. I've never even tried to look for an award ticket round trip. Is that something you've done?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends what we're doing. We book the last time we went to Europe, and then we're going again in a little bit. We had to book round trip because we were using ANA miles to book it, and they require a round trip. Now, again, that's not like a sweet spot I recommend. We only had those miles because we had originally booked. They have this special sweet spot that's like a round the world trip, and so we transferred points to them to book that, and then we decided like we don't want to do that. It's traveling way too fast, and that's like not the way we had a 3-month trip planned, and we felt like it was way too fast because of all the places we were trying to see, you know? So we just decided to cancel it, and then we had those points, so we were using those. So like those, they require a round trip. I think it helps for searching if you're doing something more complicated to search you can search each way individually. But I would never book something until I know I can do both ways anyway. So I search both, I guess. If you're searching for a specific award availability, you want to search one way at a time because it simplifies the process. But it wouldn't be uncommon that we would book. I mean, we book a round trip. Like if we go on Southwest, sometimes we book one ways and sometimes we book round trips just because it makes it a little bit easier. Some of the processes when you're with the companions and stuff, it's a little bit easier when you booked a round trip versus a one way.
That makes sense.
I always seem to like one ways just because if something goes wrong on a leg of my trip, like if it's a round trip and I can't get there when I was supposed to, it might cancel the other. I don't know. For some reason, the simplicity of a one way to me, I just like that better. So I rarely book round trip, but it's just because I want everything to be like start and finish. And now the next one will start and finish. And to me,
and you
something
can cancel
about
that. Yeah. You could cancel one part or change one part more easily if you do 2 one ways.
I just want to make sure I'm not like missing out on great deals because I always forget to even look for round trips because it's so habitual for me at this point.
I think it's really important though to compare the cash fare. And if you want to compare the cash fare round trip, absolutely, because the cash fare is almost always going to be a lot cheaper round trip than it is one way. And so
that's very interesting.
You can't get a fair comparison if you're just like if you're going to Europe, you need to price it round trip in cash. And then you can price your 2 different one ways and see what that's all going to add up to and see where you stand and which one makes more sense.
I've never heard anyone else say that before. And I think that's really important for people to keep in mind, especially if we tell people a lot to keep spreadsheets of their redemptions, just because it's very fun to look back and see what you've done with
that's
points
a good
and miles.
idea. I should have done that.
Make sure. We want to make sure that nobody's inflating their numbers though, because that is important to know that like you want to be honest about the value you're getting and not, I got this $20,000 flight for this amount of points. If that's not actually accurate, we want to be honest and have integrity on this podcast.
If you want to inflate your numbers, it's fine. I don't take issue with the average person inflating their numbers. I take more issue with like the average creator inflating their numbers.
Yes.
To manipulate people into making decisions.
That's true. I'm going to inflate all my numbers to my husband. So it sounds really, really good.
I support that.
Amazing.
Now, when we talk about international travel, especially for families, sometimes there can be a lot of hassles at the airport. When you have children, you are going on, across an ocean. It can be a lot of packing, a lot of stuff for a mom to remember. One of the things that people like about having credit cards is they have special benefits such as global entry. And there was recently a change to global entry. So tell everybody a little bit about the change and why it's actually beneficial for families.
Yeah, so this was something, it's nice when we get good news, right? I mean, some people,
Mm-hmm.
it was reported initially as really bad news because the price of global entry is going up. And
Yeah,
I'm
but
pretty sure it's going up
barely.
$20. It's not that
Right.
much. But so it was reported everywhere as like really bad news, global entry is going up. And I'm reading these articles and I got to the bottom and there was this line about how, but kids will no longer be charged. And I'm like, this is huge for families
Yeah.
because paying $100 per person wasn't feasible for a lot of families. Now, we do have global entry for our whole family, but we've been in the credit card game long enough that we have so many credit cards that have those global entry credits. So we were able to get it for our kids, but especially for people who have
Mm-hmm.
big families with 3 or 4 or 5 kids, they're not necessarily going to pay for every single kid to have it. But now, if the parents, so this goes into effect October 1st, so it's not in effect
Mm-hmm.
yet. But if on October 1st of 2024, a parent has global entry for themselves, they'll be able to apply for global entry for their kids, and there's a fee waiver, essentially. So it's essentially free for the kids after October 1st. Anyone that's under the age of 18 will be able to get that. And I think
It's amazing.
it's great because then families can go through that line. It's funny because my husband and I are always, I love global entry, but it truly, I think it comes down so much to your airport and the time of your flight when you arrive.
Mm.
It has saved us time like once ever. so
Oh no.
I'm always like, get in the global entry line. And he's like, do you see this other line? Like he does the same thing at TSA PreCheck. I'm always like,
Yes.
we're so lucky we have TSA PreCheck. He's like, do you see this line? There's no one in the other line.
I think it's true. I think so many people have pre-check now that at our home airport, it's the same thing. The TSA, I get in it for principle and
Yeah.
because I don't want to take my shoes off. But
Exactly.
most of the time, the TSA pre-check line is a little bit longer than the
or it's
regular
the
line.
same. It's like, I mean,
Yeah.
I think there are situations, right? But like I said, I think it saved us time once, global entry. So again, it's not like I'm like, oh, everybody needs this. But it is really nice when you get back from your flight. I think I will say what I think is kind of like the dual thing that you can have, and this has served us well, is there's also this thing called mobile. Is it called mobile passport control? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
It's
the
called
mobile
control.
passport control app. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with that, only certain airports have it. Like in Chicago, it's only open until like 8 p.m. or something. So it's not always open. We got down and the global entry line was crazy. It was like around this corner. And then it's funny because they'd been advertising the mobile passport control app on the airplane. And I was like, everybody's going to be using it. But nobody was in the mobile passport control line. So I hadn't actually prepared because I was like, we have global entry. We don't need it. And the line was so long for global entry that we literally just like got in the regular line and I like downloaded mobile entry. I did it all. And then we were able to go to the front of the mobile passport line and just go in. So I actually think having both can help because occasionally one line is really long. Meanwhile, my husband's like, we can just wait. It's only going to be like 20 minutes. And I'm like, I don't want to wait. So
I'm
I
not
feel the
waiting
same
for
way.
anything. Not with this toddler who just spent 12 hours on a flight.
Yes.
I will say that this summer when we came back from Honduras, we flew through Houston, and that's where we used the mobile passport control app, and that line was empty. I mean, there was no one in it.
Yeah, so anytime I've done a post on the mobile passport control app, there's always people like, don't tell everybody the secret. The lines are going to be long. But I've never had anyone tell me that the lines are getting long for that. I think people, like I said, even on the United flight on our way home, they were advertising the mobile passport app constantly and still nobody got it.
People forget.
So,
yeah.
That's bizarre to me. I see a lot of Points and Miles creators that have families talking about using it all the time. And it still seems to be a very good, very efficient option. So I don't believe in gatekeeping the secrets. We want to tell all the secrets here. We want families to be able to travel and have it be like, as little stress as possible when you're traveling as a family.
Yeah. I will say global entry is kind of a pain because you do have to go to this whole interview. You have to get fingerprinted, even kids.
I was going to ask, I was wondering what the time process is like for a family. How long did it take you guys for everyone to get approved?
So we got it so long ago that I feel like it's not relevant. Not so long, but we got it in we applied in
Okay.
2019. So that's no longer relevant at this point.
Okay.
I can tell you that people have told me a lot of data points recently. So what's really weird about it is that some people get approved really fast. I had one of the people in my Facebook group, she got approved and got her interview within a week of applying. She just got like conditional approval right away, went right through. And then I have other people tell me that it takes a year. So no one really seems to understand the different amounts of time. I messed up when I just did my renewal application, and we had been to South Korea, and I didn't look up the official. So on the application, it says like the official names. It doesn't say South Korea. It says whatever the two names are for North and South Korea, like the official government names.
We cannot wait for you to hear the rest of today's episode. But before we dive back in, we want to invite you to connect with us on Instagram. If you're enjoying the insights and travel tips we share here on the podcast, here's how you can stay even more connected with us.
First of all, follow us on our personal Instagram accounts for a glimpse into our daily lives and additional travel adventures. You can find Mary Ellen over at Family Travel for the Win with the number 4, and you can find me, Joe, at Points to Wonderland. Give us a follow and reach out to say hello and let us know if you found us from the podcast.
And of course, for all things podcast related, head over to our dedicated Instagram page at Wonderland on Points podcast to stay updated on upcoming episodes, behind the scenes moments, and maybe even some exclusive content.
Your support on these platforms means the absolute world to us, and it's a fantastic way to be part of the growing Wonderland on Points community. So grab your phone, hit that follow button, and let's learn how to travel on Points together. And now, back to the show.
The Republic of Korea.
Wrong Korea.
Oh, no.
So my application took longer, my renewal, because I had said that I went to North Korea. Because I think North Korea is maybe called the Democratic Republic of Korea.
Yes.
And I just was
like, and that sounded like the proper one. You're like, a Democratic Republic. That's right. That's the one where you have rights, right?
Yeah. So, but when my interview came up for that, I was actually, for renewal, you can often do a virtual interview. So I was able to just do a virtual interview, and the guy was like, have you been, like, tell me about when you went to North Korea. I'm like, I didn't go to North Korea. I messed up. And he's like, yeah, I figured. I'm fixing it for you. And then that was it. Like, it was a 5-minute interview.
Oh, that's nice.
So I just think no one really understands why for some people it's really short and some people it's really long. So you just kind of have to start the process and see. If it's hard to get interviews, there's, you can do it on arrival. There are, I think it is Washington Dulles now has interview on departure. So there's a way that you can do it when you're leaving.
That's interesting.
And then you can try to schedule, they kind of do these drops where they drop availability like once a week or every few weeks. So it feels like there's never availability, but if you just keep checking back, there's availability.
Okay. That's a very good tip for sure. Let's talk about in the vein of airports, global entry, all that kind of stuff. Tell us about lounge experience. We want to know which lounges you've visited, why you love lounges, what you think is the best for families, and like which cards you love for their lounge access. I know that's a lot, but just talk to us about lounges.
Lounges are so fun, right? I think for so many people, before they get into credit cards, like they've never been in an airport lounge. And so it's really fun when you finally get to go. I will say, I think it doesn't get said enough that like generally in the United States, you should have like very low expectations. Most airports in the United States don't have lounges. So we don't generally, our home airport's Chicago. Chicago O'Hare does have this one it is the worst lounge that like this. We are not snobby at all. Like we're going camping this weekend, but like the food at the lounge from our kids' opinion is fine. From other people, snobby people, it wouldn't be. There's like ramen and like granola bars. Our kids love it, right? They call it the ramen lounge. But the actual chairs are actually ripped. Like the carpet is like dirty. It's just the weirdest thing when you go in there because it's also where like Turkish Airlines business class passengers go. And I cannot imagine, like, you're flying Turkish Airlines business class and you end up in this lounge. It's an anomaly, but most of the lounges would not be like that. But that's an example of, in the United States, more what you can expect. And that lounge is almost always, like, they almost always say it's at capacity. It's really not at capacity. It's just if they have an airline, like if the Turkish Airlines business class people are in there, they don't let anyone else in there with their priority pass membership. So that would be more typical in the United States. The odd part of it is that there are some airports. So this is, I would say, in the United States, if you're just flying domestically, it really depends on your airport, what makes sense for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're really lucky and your home airport is Denver or Dallas or Dulles, then you should absolutely get the Capital One Venture X, because those airports have Capital One lounges, and those are really, really nice.
Mary Ellen and I are going to travel more in November, and we're very excited to try the Dallas lounge.
Yeah.
Very excited.
And those are really, really nice. American Express, Centurion lounges, I would say, like, just totally ignore those for families, because you have to pay. You don't get any included guests anymore. You have to pay per guest unless you spend $75,000 a year on your platinum card, which, like, just isn't normal. Like, that's not what normal people are doing.
Not happening.
So, like,
not for people on this podcast.
Ignore those. Yeah. And then the other one, though, that I think is important to consider, depending on your airport, is if your home airport is, and I hope I don't say the airports wrong, but I'm going to say LaGuardia, JFK, Boston. Maybe they're opening one in Las Vegas, but the new Chase lounges.
Hong Kong. Well, that's international.
Yeah, Hong Kong. If your home airport's Hong Kong.
I'm not listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Then you should definitely have the Chase Sapphire Reserve or the Ritz-Carlton card, because those are the only ones that give you, like, unlimited access to those Chase lounges. And you would want that. If that's your home airport, you're going to want that access.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, I think
to point that out to people more and more that are emailing us for credit card consultations. It really does matter where your home airport is. Like that does guide some decision making when you're thinking of the elite credit cards and their lounge access.
Yeah. I mean, I think that overall, I generally recommend the Venture X to everybody, because the lounge access is generous, even if you just have to go in knowing, like, you might not use it that much depending on what your home airport is. But because you get unlimited priority pass guests with your Venture X, and because you can add 4 authorized users and they all get their own lounge access, it's a great card. I mean, it's definitely, like, all around the easiest access card. It's the best for families because you'll be able to all get in. And so that's really overall the best one. It's just that there's these certain ones. I mean, really, it's just those other airports. If you are based in those other airports, that you should really, the better one would be the Ritz card, but it's a little harder to get it. That one you can't open directly, so it's a little bit harder to get to.
Oh, interesting.
But but otherwise, I mean, the Venture X that's why people talk about it all the time. because it's a really good all around card.
Popular
and you
for
can
a
add,
reason.
like, I keep telling, my brother lives in Denver, and he's like, his family's, like, not into lounges, and I'm always like, we will add you for free. Let me do this for you.
What an
offer! To get to the
offer.
airport right when we get there. We don't like to get there early, and I'm like, I don't even know you.
That's because you've never been in the lounges. Probably that's what I would think. Because first of all, I hate the feeling that I might somehow miss my flight. I love to get to the airport hours and hours and hours early, and it's not fun in St. Louis. I have to tell you, it is not fun. There is nothing to do. It's boring. The Wi-Fi is horrible. It's just not great. So if I lived in Denver, you better believe I would be there 7 hours before my flight, posting up at that lounge, eating everything in sight.
Well, and that's how, like,
packing things to go.
Yeah, my sister lives. So both my siblings live in Denver, and my sister lives there. She has 3 kids, so her 3 kids under 5 or 5 and under. So they travel a lot, and that's part of their airport routine. They just go early, so they're not rushing. Because she's really big on, like, you have to just, like, with kids, if you get amped up, it just creates more and more problems. And one of the most important things at the airport is to get there plenty early so that you're not rushing. Because if you start getting amped up while you're traveling, your kids sense it. And then you get amped up, and then it's like your day is not going well. I'm sorry, but like you lost already. Like you're not having a good day anymore. So if you just get there early, then and for her, they just go to the lounge. The kids get their cookies. They both grown-ups get a drink to relax a little bit. And then no one's rushing.
Absolutely. And I want to throw another little tip out there for that, because we had Kels What Else. She's a family Midwest mom Instagram influencer. We had her on the podcast. And one of the things she talks about on her page all the time is get to the airport early and then like let a parent go off and you run your kids. Like if you have small children, it also gives you an opportunity to let them run out their energy, and then you can come have some snacks in the lounge, and then you can go back out for another lap or two. So I feel like that's a very good tangible tip for our family listeners.
Because kids want to do the moving walkway 10 times. They want to do the escalator 10 times. And if you're not in a rush, you can say like, yes, let's do the escalator up and down 10 times.
Absolutely.
That's fine.
Yes. And it does not matter how people look at you while you're letting your kids run laps through the airport.
It doesn't matter. Everyone who has had kids has done it.
Oh my gosh, I was just on a flight back from Salt Lake City a few weeks ago, and this infant screamed for the first hour. And I wanted to go over to that mom so bad and be like, don't listen to all these people. There were so many snide comments and side eyes, and it was so sad. And I was like, you're doing so good. Like every person who was a mom on that flight, we all kept looking at each other with so much sympathy and empathy. People are mean, but who cares?
Totally. Well, you know what? It's mostly just in the U.S. that people are mean, though, because I will say that when my daughter was 4 months old, we went to the Philippines and Thailand with her. And we were gone for I used my FMLA. My husband and I both used our FMLA. Instead of using it when she was born, we used it. You can use it anytime in the first year. You get 12 weeks, and it can be unpaid, obviously, because it's the U.S. And so we don't have great policies. But we used a little bit of it when she was born. And then we saved some of it to use when she was old enough to travel. Wow. And one of the most powerful things for me as a newer mom to be traveling in both of those countries, and I think this would be true. It's honestly true after talking to people in almost everywhere else in the world, but especially in the Philippines and Thailand, whenever she would start to cry, I would get kind of nervous because here, right, you get the side eye because people are like, why would you bring a baby here? Like, why is your baby at this restaurant? And every single time that she started to cry, someone would come and try to help me. And so it wasn't like, why would you bring a baby here? It's like, what a sweet, you're like, oh, how can I help you? This, and it was such a different experience for travel to see that everybody like loves babies here. Like they're just baby loving cultures. And it was really lovely to have that experience as a new mom, to see that other people welcomed my baby into the public space and I think it gave me a little more confidence when I came back to the United States, and I was a little bit more like, you don't want my baby here? Sorry. But we're gonna go anyway. Like
new moms need that. I love that so much.
So sometimes people say like, oh, I could never travel to another country. And I'm like, I don't know. It's honestly sometimes easier once you get there because people are friendly to you and to your kids. So
I told a story on the podcast one time in one of our first episodes about a time I was on a plane and I had my foster son, and he was very tiny at the time, only a couple months old. And he was just having a very hard time. And I was comforting him in every way that I could, but still he had only been in my care a short time. So I did not have the same smell as his birth mom, and I was different, but I was trying, and they could definitely, people on the plane could see that I was doing everything I could. But I had this one woman in front of me, kind of catty corner from me, who reached back and said, "You're doing all the right things." And I just almost cried. I mean, it was exactly what I needed to hear at the right time. And it was just so encouraging because I felt like I was just bothering all these people. And it was really hard for me to think that I was, causing a scene. But always everyone should be that encourager, that woman
Yeah, totally.
who reaches
And
out.
it's hard. It can be really hard when they're little. I mean, for us, I think the hardest point was like between 9 and 18 months with my daughter because she was so active and they can't pay attention to anything. And like, you're just we would walk laps in the aisle. We would bring like a pull behind toy and we would just let her go back and forth and back. I mean, we would walk with her, but we had to because she couldn't sit still. And it's hard. I mean, we are way past that stage. Our travel is so much different now because our kids have so much experience that they don't have those stresses. But even, I mean, for so many years, we had to do so many things in order to prep our kids for travel. Like every single time there's this really good book I like called The Airport Book by Lisa Brown. And we would do it every single time for prepping the kids about like every single thing that's going to happen in the airport. And then there's the TSA has these videos that are like, what are they? They have some little slogan, but they talk about going through security. And every time we do it, because it's hard at first, it's really hard. It's unfamiliar. It's loud. It's all these things could happen. Like when, and sometimes the things that happen are so unreasonable. Like my daughter went through security once when she was like 4 or 5 and the beeper went off. She was the random person and they have to like swipe your hands, but they won't let the parent touch the child until they've had their hands swiped. And she's like ahead of me and freaking out because they're like, no, you can't touch your mom. Stuff like that some kids it would be fine, but it wasn't fine for my daughter. And it was like it was tough.
It's scary.
So, we got through it, but I think like just as an encouragement to all the parents of kids who are younger, or if you're just starting traveling, it is hard at first. There's a lot of stuff. Traveling is the plane day itself is very different and it's really hard for kids, especially if they're neurodivergent. It's really hard.
Yes.
And so I think, but it does get better the more you do it. So my kids now
absolutely does.
They're pros. They're real, not that everything goes smoothly. Sometimes we still have problems, but all that practice when they were younger, like I'm really glad we did it when they were younger because now they're 11 and they know what to expect and they
absolutely. Yeah, I like to tell people to just do it. There's a lot of fear when it comes to traveling with small kids. And also I'm glad that you mentioned the part about neurodivergent. I have a neurodivergent 12-year-old and it's a different thing when you have kids with sensory issues, or that get overstimulated in public. You have meltdowns in a totally different way. You have to prepare kids in a totally different way.
Totally.
You have to get used to people looking at you like you're crazy. And so I think it's just good to know that doesn't have to hold people back from these travel experiences.
Yep.
And so I think that's a reason that I love people that do what you do, because you're just encouraging people to just take the leap and do it, and you're giving them all the right tools. And so
and there's like for neurodivergent kids, I'm glad there's a lot of tools, right, that you can just
Yes.
It's like literally like it's like a physical toolbox in the backpack. It's like really good noise canceling earphones where my daughter used to hate the noise of the airplane because it was just like something about it really bothered her. And I'm like, okay, so we bought, at the time it felt crazy. We bought her like $60 headphones. Like I was like, this is, because we were using earbuds from the Dollar Tree, but I'm like, I think she needs those. And that made stuff like that. Like that made a huge difference for her. It blocks, if you get really good ones, active noise canceling headphones, it blocks the airplane noise a lot. And you can, so stuff like that, where, you just have to, all those things. We used to always have to pack Play-Doh because it's like they needed something.
Gosh. My daughter, we used to have to bring like chewing jewelry so she could like bite down on it. And I vividly remember being on a layover once and she was like screaming at the top of her lungs and people are looking at me weird because she was like 7 and they're not understanding why a person that's this big and looks quote unquote normal is making these sounds. And I was, having to do all of our toolbox stuff like, okay, lean against me with all your weight and squeeze my hands. And, you get really used to doing very strange things in public, but there's just nothing that should stand between families and traveling if it's what you want to do, because it is so beneficial and it teaches the kids so much. So I'm not even sure how we got all the way down this rabbit hole,
but I love it.
I do too. It's really important. It's a really important conversation to have.
Yeah.
I will tell for our listeners, we're going to have a whole episode coming up. We have it on our schedule with another travel-loving mom who has a child with spina bifida, and we're going to talk a lot about what travel looks like when you have people with physical differences or neurodivergence, and where we really want to dedicate even a whole episode to that because we think it's really important, accessible travel for all. So that is on the schedule for the coming weeks.
Yeah, that's great. I will add too, because I think a lot of people don't know this. If you're flying Southwest, I assume that you talk like, Southwest is obviously really popular, but if you have kids who are autistic or have intellectual disabilities, you can pre-board with Southwest. And I think people not everybody knows that, but you can, you have to go to the gate agent. Because it really helps. It really makes a difference to get on the plane and be settled.
I've never heard this. This would have changed my life years ago.
Well, it still can now, but
yes, she's at 12. She's a lot. Wait, her toolbox is strong. I'm very proud of her, but I think she might. I'm trying to decide if she would feel embarrassed that I would have to go up and say something to somebody for us to be able to board early, because she tries to, she wants to be like everyone else, and so she really masks hard at this age.
Yeah. But but it's good for other people to know that you just go up to the gate agent. You can do it discreetly if your kids, like, you don't want your kids to know. And officially what it is like for each person that has an issue, like an invisible disability or whatever reason you're requesting pre-boarding, they can have one person board with them. So if you had a larger family, it might just be like one parent boarding with them. But I think it can make a big difference for a lot of kids to just get settled first. And we don't ever, like, if we pre-board, we're not sitting at the front. And if you pre-board, you can't take the exit seat. So it's not like you're getting the best seats. Like, we always go like past the exit rows, halfway to the back. And that's just like our spot where we go and we settle in. And it makes a big difference because then we're not like flustered and everything else.
Absolutely.
Katie, there's a program that I've seen at several airports, and I actually told my sister about it because this is something that she's also very, very familiar with, where some airports will give you, I don't know if it's a sunflower or a sunshine. There's some, I cannot remember the name of the program.
Typically. Yeah.
Okay. That kind of is something so that you don't ever have to say it out loud, but the agents are trained to recognize that if you have that sunflower lanyard, that you maybe do have some intellectual disabilities or you may need special care or attention.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's becoming, so I believe it started in the UK. And so it's something that we had used, I'm going to say like in 2020 when we were in the UK, like before the pandemic, it was already there. And so it can be helpful in the UK at like, it's recognized even more places. So like museums or like the Harry Potter studio tour, things like that. It's recognized in the US. I think I've seen it's more and more recognized by airports. I believe that Southwest employees are trained to recognize it specifically. Like, I think I saw that specifically about Southwest, but it just signals essentially an invisible disability. And so you don't have to say something. Again, the issue though could be depending on the person, they may not want to wear it, obviously. But for people who don't mind it, or for younger kids too, who, might not mind, I think those things can help because they alert airport employees. Like, I think back to that day when my daughter was like stopped and had to have her hand swiped. And I'm like, oh, if we had one of those, if I had the words to say, maybe it could have gone better. But also sometimes TSA agents are so rigid that maybe it wouldn't have gone better. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered. It's hard to say.
Wow. This is so good.
Yeah, I think you could look up if someone's interested. I think if you just Google sunflower lanyard, it should show. When we got them in London, you could get them for free at the London airport, but I don't know exactly in the US.
Okay.
If you order them or how it works.
Maybe I'll do a little Googling on that and see if I can find a link to put in the show notes for you guys, because I think that's incredibly valuable information. Let's try, I think we're already past an hour now, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would love to talk a little bit about Hyatt with you, because your team put together an amazing, I love that you have a team, by the way, goals for us someday.
I'm going to hire my husband. I'm going to I'm gonna hire my husband just so I can say my team did this for
It
me.
feels weird when I say it, but it's like I cannot. I'm a homeschool mom. Like I didn't mean to have a business. Like so I am struggling to manage. And so the only way that I haven't quit already is by hiring. Everyone I hire is very part-time. But it's because I cannot do it on my own. It's already it's a real struggle to do it at all.
We get it. And I always say, like, it's because of Mary Ellen that I haven't quit what we're doing, because it is an incredibly ridiculous amount of work having a podcast that I would have never known. And splitting the responsibilities is the only way. So I totally get that you have a team. If I had a business like yours, I would also have a team. It's just fun to say. So your team has put together this awesome resource for the Hyatt Club lounges worldwide, which is so helpful and valuable, especially since so many of them didn't open back up after COVID, and it's hard to figure out how to use Club Access awards. So why do you love the Club Access? Like what made you decide that you wanted to have your team put together this resource in the first place? And what's your favorite maybe club that you've tried?
So we love, for us, it really fits our vacation style, the Hyatt clubs. I mean, I think any club lounges could, but with Hyatt, it's the easiest ones to get access to without having elite status with that program. So like Marriott has club lounges, but you have to be a platinum member in order to get those. And so it can be a little bit harder to do that. Whereas with Hyatt, you can either pay extra to go to get a club lounge access room. If you've stayed 20 nights at Hyatt's within a year, you'll get these 2 certificates that you can use to upgrade any given stay that's up to 7 nights. So at first, I mean, when we started, I couldn't imagine, like, I'm like saying 20 nights at a Hyatt, like that, how is that ever going to happen? But then next thing you know, it does happen sometimes.
Yes.
But
yes. Well, and they have promotions.
They have
sometimes,
promotions,
like the double qualifying nights that I am currently. I got targeted for. I'm pretty excited about it. Sorry,
we are like the biggest hypocrites about elite status, because for years I was like, it's so silly, we don't need it. And then during the pandemic, there were so many promotions, and we ended up with Hyatt Globalist. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just like everybody. And now we're like, it's so dumb. Globalist is so dumb. And that I'm like, we have to have this forever. Like, I'm like, it's so dumb that we got sucked in, but we did. And for the first few years, we're like, we're not going to renew it. And then this year I looked at my husband and we're like, I don't know, we're halfway through. We're not, I think we're at 30 nights for the year for us, which is halfway of what we need, which is still a lot to go. And we've done most of our travel for the year already. And I'm like, wow. You realize we still have to get it. And he's like, I know. I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's for my job. I need it for my job.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. But content.
I know, except that I don't post about it because I don't find it relatable. So
right.
I don't ever post about it.
It's hard.
Just an excuse. No, I will. Yeah. Anyway, I'm off track. See, I'm just as bad as you. I love getting off track.
Amazing.
So Hyatt Club Lounges, we really love them because they match our travel style for like an easy family trip. So we are not foodies. If you can guess that by the fact we eat dumpster
We're not
food.
either.
So I don't think it's as appealing if you're a foodie, because but what we love about it is with a club lounge, you get breakfast included and you also get dinner included. They don't call it dinner. They usually call it cocktail hour or appetizers, or they call it something else. But we have never been to a club lounge where it can't count for dinner. So I would say the most basic one we've been to is at the Hyatt Regency in Orlando. Or is it? I'm pretty sure it's the Regency.
Yes, it is.
But even the dinner there, like, it's basic, but I think they had at least like one hot entree, like either pasta or sliders or something. I'm pretty sure they had a soup, and then they had like vegetables and dip and cheese and crackers. And I'm like, that's dinner.
That's
like,
my favorite kind of way to eat. That's literally how I feed my family. And like, here's some finger food. I'm not cooking for you people.
Exactly. So, for us, it just works really well with our kids, where we wake up in the morning, we go to the club lounge for breakfast, we go out for most of the, for the day. and then we come back to the hotel for dinner. It really simplifies it for us. It simplifies the decision making. It just like helps us have a better routine with the kids. It's more familiar. It's so that same routine just works for us. I think it can work for a lot of families, and it's cutting down on the food costs as well.
Absolutely.
And the decision making, right? So much of the issue with travel is like how many decisions you have to make. And pretty much every lounge, they usually have some local food. So we went one spot that's close that I really highly recommend is in Merida, Mexico. So it is, you can fly, if you're flying Southwest, you have to fly into Cancun and then drive there, or there is a train, but Merida, Mexico is, I want to say it's 3 hours. So it's not super close, but for everybody, I know there's always someone listening who's like so worried about safety in Mexico, but Merida is in a state of Mexico that is literally like, it is not even listed as having any concerns on the US State Department website. So if you're not familiar, the US State Department like ranks regions, and frankly, a lot of countries in the world rank the US as a problem to travel to. So like the US does not rank. So I'm like, okay, I live in Chicago. So Merida, it's like super safe. And around the area around it is beautiful. So we just spent a week, maybe we were there for a week at that one, but we've been there before for a month, to that area for a month before. And there's like, you can see Mayan pyramids there. There's a beach there. There's a place we went that you can see. It was literally like 40,000 flamingos are there over the winter that you can go out in a boat and see. There's just so much stuff, little day trips that you can take from there. This Merida is a Category 1 Hyatt, which means it costs only 5,000 points per night.
Mary Ellen. What am I about to say? It's going on my honeymoon list.
So it is, even if you so what I recommend that people do for this, if you're not a globalist, just book straight into a suite. So a suite is going to cost 8,000 points per night there, which is still like nothing.
Sorry. And then the microphone.
With the suite, you get club lounge access. You don't always, but my map of club lounges, it tells you if you book a suite, if you get access or not, because it depends per hotel. In Merida, you do get access to the club lounge if you book the suite. And the suite, we stayed, it's a nice suite. Like, it's not, if people don't think it's nice, there's something wrong with them. I don't know. Like, it has like 2 rooms, a big king bed, a big bathroom, and like a living room with it. There's a pull-out sofa, but then we got a roll away too, because our kids don't like to sleep in the same bed. So,
so you were able to book one suite, 8,000 points, and then fit yourself on a big king bed and each kid on a different bed. That's pretty nice.
So, and I will say we had to, the max occupancy is 3. So we had to put that we were booking for 3. It's so dumb because I'm like, it clearly like, so in Europe, I don't recommend doing like fudging your numbers in Europe. We have, but I don't recommend it. But in Mexico, it's not like about the fire codes. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like the hotel has to put an occupancy number. We literally walked up to the check-in desk with 4 people, and he's like, "Oh, your reservation only says 3 and you have 4." And we're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Let me change it here." So he didn't even blink. So I think even 5, I honestly think even 5 people could stay there. Anyway, that club lounge it's smaller, but like they have every night at dinner, they still have like 2 or 3 different options of like Mexican food. So you're still, we're still getting cochinita pibil at night, which is like one of the regional specialties, and like other things. So
do they include drinks as well? Because I know when people do Mexico, they're looking at all inclusives. A lot of them are because of the alcohol included in that. So club lounge includes alcoholic beverages as well.
Yeah. So they almost always will. I'm sure you could find a situation where it doesn't, but typically they will include them at nighttime during that specific time. I think in the one in Merida, it was like they had some Mexican beers. I feel like he could make us like a few very basic cocktails, and then they had wine. So it's not it's not the same as an all-inclusive where you can get
Right. But it's
all your fancy
much
drinks.
cheaper.
But it's really cheap. And you can pair, what
Yeah.
we did when we did it is we paired it with, we actually didn't do an all-inclusive on that trip, although we have many other times. We went to the Andaz Mayakoba first, which is a Hyatt resort property. And so we went there for 3 nights. That's expensive. We paid peak pricing. It was 29,000 points per night. So we went there first for 3 nights, and then we went to Merida. And so we did both things, had both experiences.
I love that.
So
are there good beaches there?
There are beaches about 45 minutes away. So not right there.
Oh, okay. So it's not right on the ocean. Okay.
Yeah, it's not on the ocean. Another really cool thing they have there is they do a demonstration on Saturday nights of that Mayan ball game with like the hoop that's on the side. If you've ever seen this, it's like
that's
the hoop
so
on the
cool.
side of in the pyramids. And my kids also, when they were younger, watched Elena of Avalor, and it's in there too.
Yes, and it's also in the movie El Dorado, the Disney movie.
So it's really fun to see those
things
things in real life.
That's amazing.
So we were like that one. We went to Japan, and we stayed at 2 Hyatts that had club lounges. So if you want the fanciest club lounges, definitely go to Asia. That's going to be where you're going to get the fanciest ones. But
good to know.
Merida is so cheap and close, and it's like an easy trip.
That's awesome.
A lot of people also do them in Hawaii because food is so expensive in Hawaii.
Makes
so there's
a lot of sense.
2 there too.
If people want to go to that Merida Hyatt Regency, you mentioned Southwest, you have to fly into Cancun. Is there an airport closer to it if you want to fly directly without having to drive 3 hours?
There is one in Merida. And I would assume, I haven't actually looked up the routes because we just always fly with our companion pass.
Okay.
I would assume that American flies there, probably from Dallas and or Miami. And maybe United does too. I think there's a couple flights, but it's not going to be as common. But if people aren't on the Southwest track, then there would be other ways that you could fly directly there and not have to do the drive from Cancun. Although there's stuff along the way from the drive. Like there's a couple really cool cenotes on the drive on the way there. So it's not like it's bad. I don't know. It's not, the drive isn't, there's a toll road. It's really easy to drive toll road.
That's good to know. Some people don't want to do a road trip if they're flying somewhere.
I know, that's true.
I'm always down for a road trip though.
I guess in my mind, 3 hours isn't a road trip, but I guess it is.
No, because you're in the Midwest. For us, if it's like under 12, it's a day trip if it's under 12 hours, obviously.
Like we're driving 4 hours to go camping tomorrow. So that I'm like, I don't even consider that. I'm like, I don't know.
It's nothing. I love it.
Katie, I think that we could talk to you for hours and have so much fun. You're a wealth of knowledge, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. You're a homeschool mom. You have a lot going on just to care for your kids. So we really appreciate you being here and sharing with our listeners. Tell everybody where they can find you on the internet.
Sure. Yeah. So typically my name is just Katie's Travel Tricks. So it's on the internet. I'm at katiestraveltricks.com. That's the same on Instagram as Katie's Travel Tricks. I also have a new podcast out that's called Points for Normal People. So I guess if you're listening to this, you probably like podcasts. So mine is a little bit of a different format. It's a solo podcast, really short episodes, and it's almost like a course, starting from scratch and moving forward is what I'm doing. So a little bit of a different style that just fit with what I saw.
It's great, you guys. It's very digestible. It's easy to understand. We also saw that Katie's podcast was ranking up in the top 5, like almost immediately after you launched. I saw you on that list. So amazing job. We're very impressed.
Thanks. I actually put myself in how-to because mine is not, it's very how-to, and it's not, I don't do trip reports. I don't do, it's different. Yeah.
I'm going to link your podcast. I'm going to link your website, your Instagram, everything in the show notes. Highly, highly recommend all of your content for families that want to just really get their basic building blocks. Like you just make it so easy to understand, and you've got so many great tips and tricks. And we are so grateful that you were willing to spend a big chunk of your time with us, because you got a whole business, a whole family. Like, I don't really know how you do it, but I'm impressed.
Don't either. Well, I'm so happy that I could be here with you guys. I will tell you, I generally don't do podcast interviews, but I was like, other moms who want to do points for normal people, I'll do that one. So
that
I'm glad
makes
to be able
so much
to come on
us.
and chat with you because I love meeting like-minded people because there's not that many of us. So
Absolutely. And I didn't realize you live so close. I kind of feel like I would love to like do a meetup sometime. I feel like we would all be friends. I'm just
you
saying.
can let me know if you're in the Chicagoland area.
Absolutely. Well, it's so easy to do now with points and miles. I did a whole Chicago trip for my daughter's birthday back in December, and it was really,
Oh,
really
that's
fun.
so fun.
Yes. So thank you again. We're going to link it all up, and everybody go follow Katie, and we'll see you guys next time. If you enjoyed this show today, please consider writing us a review or clicking 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please subscribe and follow along so that you never miss an episode.
You can follow the podcast on Instagram or YouTube at Wonderland on Points Podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Family Travel for the Win with the number 4.
And you can find me on Instagram at Points to Wonderland.
If you're thinking about getting a new travel rewards credit card, consider using the links in our show notes. Using our links helps to support us and keep our podcast going so we can provide you with all the latest tips and tricks when it comes to traveling on points.
And if you aren't sure which card is right for you, shoot us an email at wonderlandonpoints@gmail.com, and we would be happy to walk you through a free card consultation. That's also a great place to send us all of your comments and questions. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you here next time.